Hey guys, Joshua Peterson, Peterson Electric here tonight. We're in Centennial for a customer. They got an electrical issue going on, and it's happened for about, I think, 3 years. And it wasn't as major in the past, but they said lights would flicker. That could mean simple switches in the wall. Um, they've had the power company out a couple times. They said it wasn't their side. A couple electricians thought it was maybe some loose stuff in an attic. It took us about 2.5 hours, but we finally narrowed it down. Kind of an odd one. I've put out some other videos that say, hey, if you got an electric range, turn that on. This is a gas range, so that doesn't help. There's no spa. All she really has is a 240 in the home is going to be the AC and the dryer. There's no baseboard heaters, no cooktops, no wall ovens. So basically, in a nutshell, what we're finding is anything on the neutral side will freak it out. The odd thing is that when we turned it on the whole entire house and got it running for about 45 minutes to increase the ampacity, to put more heat on the wire, to see if we could hear any arcing, the AC actually cleaned it up. But when we turned the AC off and we hit either a garbage disposal, the dryer, or the vacuum cleaner or hair dryer, the lights would flicker everywhere. So I'll show you an example real quick. So the point is the connected load is considered, a hard connected load is like a dishwasher. A soft connected load would be a hair dryer or a vacuum, which, if you move out of your house, it's those items come with you. So you watch what happens when I hit. I'm going to focus over here too. Look at that right there. So after we traced the circuit out, we found that we had 7 circuits for lighting in the home. And they were situated as A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, and that's just A phase and B phase. So it didn't matter which phase it was on, it was affecting it. And all the switches were on, and it was turning these rooms on and off. And when it gets worse, the neutral gets a little bit more resistance and less flow for the current or the voltage, the pressure. You'll see more current spike like this back and forth. How I also knew that is I took a meter, and I have a couple meters I use. I use this at the meter down below, so we checked pressure at the breaker, and the breaker down here at the bottom of the yard about 60 feet away showed a constant 123 to 124 on A and B phase to neutral. We got up here, and before we even turn anything on, we're getting a 121 versus a 127. When you get above 125, you're going to start blowing light bulbs if they're incandescent, possibly CFL and LED. When I decide to actually turn on the garbage disposal, see if you can go do that real quick. I'll just tell you the voltage I am getting after that. It dropped to 106. Okay, hold on. Do that again. And it went up to 136. And that garbage disposal is only going to be on one phase. So as it dropped to 106 and up to 136, if that holds consistent, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to fry something on that circuit. If you starve something of voltage, it's going to fry, and if you go too high, it's going to fry too. And the bottom, well, let's just say this, if you starve it of voltage, you're going to suffocate it, and if you go too high, you're going to burn it. I have had houses where the surge protectors hit 140 volts like this home is, and we blew surge protectors, and then they started to melt. If you're starting to see lights flicker, the thing to check is it happening on all breakers? Again, the AC cleaned it up because it's 240 volts with the ground. There is no neutral. But what helped us to isolate this, to see that it was flickering back and forth, was definitely the dryer hitting. First thing I checked was my dryer connection, so I didn't have any extra resistance. I checked in the back of the dryer, the plug, and everything, because that was my only 240 in the house with the neutral. Then when I saw that was clean, I checked the pressure at the dryer, and it was a little bit dipped. But when I hit it with my inrush meter, and I've got a, I'll show you real quick. It's about an $800 meter. It's my Fluke. And this is no Home Depot big box store. This is a 381 600 volt. Probably, I think it's up to 1,000 amps. But you can put on this lead on the end of it and check for amperage. You probably saw it in another video. But the point of it is that this meter, if you hit inrush on the button, I'll show you that right here, I can capture a second, a split of a second, to know how much inrush my motor's doing. Well, see, a dryer runs with a 120 volt motor, and it has a 240 volt element. So one side's always going to be heavier than the other side, no matter what you do. An AC is going to be just the same. It's a dirty motor at 240, has no neutral. So the point we're trying to make here tonight is that I captured 33 amps on B phase, and I captured about 12 amps on A phase. Once the centrifugal force of the motor gets going, it completes the circuit in the dryer, and then it allows current to go to the element, and then it heats up. It may plateau and balance, but you're always going to have one leg hotter than the other. So learning something about this myself, you'll see that the dryer is a great tool to check it. If the house is getting an issue with one of the A phase or the B phase, the electrical range in the AC will be great to check that too. Now, what I decided to do is that once I realized that my voltage was different here and here, I checked my connections down there. But I'll show you, I ran a number 10 gauge THHN, okay? And it was white because it was on my truck. I don't care what color it is. It probably would have worked on a number 12, but I just wanted to try a number 10 because it's good for 40 amps in the code book. And then if you look in 310 15B6 or whatever it is, you can go up to 90 degrees Celsius with a -2, and then probably get about 40 amps on this. But the bottom line is I don't have an electric range. I'm not leaving this permanent. I was just using it to test. When I put this wire in, and I wired it in here to the neutral, right in here, I was able to take that number 10, put it into here. Let me see if I can get you, I don't have a light. Let me see if we back up. Yeah, so in here on the neutral, I put that number 10 across, okay? And then I came down here, which if you're a homeowner, don't do this. Don't be stupid and cheap and get yourself killed. This video is not for people that are dumb or uneducated or in the fact that you don't have any kind of trade or license. Please don't do this. Please call your utilities, call a professional electrician. This video is typically there to A, help the customer figure out, is this really needed tonight? B, help an electrician to better diagnose, because a lot of you guys on YouTube, they don't show their secrets. The bottom line is we're all in the same field trying to do the same thing, help the customer. And C, most of all, it's an infomercial too for myself. I just trying to help expand that knowledge because other people have handed the baton to me, but please don't do this if you're not certified in this. So we ran this across the grass, and you don't want to leave it like this because this is not a temporary purpose at all. So here's our meter box. Right here. This is a double meter box. Go ahead and come this way. So that means you're going to see two meters back to back. Okay? Both 125 amp. How I knew it was hers is I turned everything on in the home and this disc spun a lot faster. About twice as fast as that. And it was during the middle of the day when these people weren't home. So I knew that this was hers. Funny thing is, she says that a couple other electricians only went to that side, and I almost did the same thing until we saw, and she told me the bushes were covering the second one. So this goes to the neighbor, and this comes here. The transformer's on the other side of this fence, but the customer is responsible for the meter back to the home. So anyways, here is the setup. Here's my 125 amp breaker. I had perfect pressure here, perfect pressure out of the back side of the breaker, so I couldn't blame the breaker. I took my thermal gun after I've heated up the house for 45 minutes to an hour, and I was running 60 amps, and that breaker itself on both sides in the top
once I took off this plate, was reading only about 85 degrees on a 90-degree day. That tells me it's not failing. When it fails, it starts flickering at 120 up to 300 and 330, it melts. So right in here is my neutral. So I made sure that my connections was tight here. I'm wearing gloves, okay? And right in here, here's my hots coming in. But it looks like to me that we've got the 2-aughts coming out, which I believe, it's so dirty and old, I believe these are 2-aughts for 125 amp is my guess. Maybe a little undersized about 40 years ago, but that's how they did it. So once I hooked up this number 10 and I took off the yellow on both sides and put it in and just did a curly Q, I had a perfect pressure at 123 up there, and when I hit the garbage disposal and the vacuum, it still stayed constant at 123. The lights flickered a little, but yeah, I'm running a 10 gauge up there. I'm not running a number 2-aught. But the point of this is, actually I think it's a 1-aught, excuse me. But the point of this is that this was a great testing tool to go, how do I figure out from A to B if this is bad? Now here's the other thing that we found out through this. And by the way, I did call the power company, explain everything I was doing. I didn't just cut their tag without their permission. And then I did call the building department and talk to them about what I need to do to get this temped off for temporary power. So I called the city, and this house basically was built probably 40 years ago. They said the last thing pulled on a permit was a roof, doors, windows, and siding about 5 years ago. But they never have anything that says that they did an addition on the back of this home. Unfortunately, she just bought the home, and now she's got some of these issues going on, and she bought it in the last 5 years. She's already had to do the roof and a couple other things. But now we got an issue with this. So my hunch is that they might have nicked that feeder right underground. Because did you see where the panel comes in? I mean, this would have been the 2009 code. You couldn't have done it this way. Not in this city especially. So right here, I believe the power came in under here, and this used to be the outside of the panel. How I know that is I've got a PVC conduit, Schedule 80 right there, with an MA fitting, and 2 EMT conduits right there. So they basically blew out this back wall, took the siding off, created a kitchen, and extended the back room. And it's not a bad job, but the issue is they never put a disconnect on the house outside. Our cities in Colorado expect us to have a disconnect outside for fire department near the meter. Excel in the last 5 years maybe didn't require the bypass lever now, but they do now. But still, you would have had to have a disconnect outside. The other thing is in the 2009 code, it still stated you had to have a number, an 8-foot ground rod put in there, about a 5/8 inch minimum, and drove one. Now we have to have 2 of them. It also stated we needed a cold water bond, which it doesn't have. And I think it was the 2011 we adopted the inter-system bonding. But anyway, so you can just see right here the lights were flickering. There's really nothing on but the lights themselves. And so even a minimal ampacity at 6 amps running lights tonight, it's starting to get worse. So yeah, and the fridge kicks on. So here's the thing is, if you guys are going through lights flickering, don't put it off. I know this video is a little long, but you'll be glad, and you'll probably actually, give me a couple good comments. But here's the thing, don't put it off because you don't know how bad it can get and you don't know what it is. So if your check engine light comes on in your car, I have a tendency to want to put it off too, because it's like it's always an oxygen sensor, or it's going to be, or a gas cap or something on there that makes that thing flick for emissions. But the thing is that with electrical, you shouldn't do that because you don't know if you're making it worse. And I've had it where I had one 3 days ago, it was just in the panel. And I just had to clean off some of the feeders from the old deox and wipe it down and put it back in and tighten it up, and he caught it just in time. And usually how you know is you can't get those threads reversed with an Allen wrench and it won't come undone. And once you're to that point, it's toast. You got to replace it. The one thing though that I can't figure out is that if this was always outside, but it doesn't look like it was, they built this in here. And why they put a panel in a closet, I know it's not a linen closet, but technically it doesn't meet Article 110.26, which says we have to have clearance to work on it. So we've got to run a subfeeder from this panel now, cut off this right down here, and run a subfeed this way through the wall, outside and down. So either we're going to go on the outside of the wall with conduit, or we're going to have to go through the drywall and down. But here's the thing. The inspector has the right to come in and say, hey, this has to be taken down now. because I can barely service it myself, and I'm not a large guy. But right here is where they'd end up having to cut and pull this out, and no longer can this be shelving. So it's going to make a difference of paint and texture, and they're going to have to redo this. So don't ever do anything like that. But if this panel was outside, it would have been easy to run temp power in. Now we're dealing with how do we get temp power in here safely so she's secured while she goes to work. We can't leave that back door cracked. And everything now, there's nothing outside to connect to for this house. So the thing that we may have to end up doing is running through a window that pops open. But it doesn't feel secure to do it that way. But temp power to a home, there's no way to go overhead. If you guys have any ideas, go ahead and give me your ideas. But again, if you saw with the camera everything going on, and I think we're going to end up doing is going through the window and safing it off. But I'll have to get an inspection on my temp power, and I'll have to get an inspection on my 2-foot trench, and then rent a backhoe out there, get a locates done, and dig all that up. Set my disconnect. And when you set your disconnect, go ahead and put a couple breaker spots in there just in case they do a spa later. Now you got your juice outside too. You know, we can feed it up here with, well, the breaker's minimized at 125 amps down there, so we'll probably just leave it at that. But yeah, so thanks guys for joining us. Hopefully this will help you out, especially you electricians trying to test these things out. It's a little bit more difficult. If you are watching this and you subscribe to us and you're a nice electrician that has a nice knowledge and you want to share something with me, I'd love it if you'd share with me. How do you guys find a spot in the ground when the power's finally severed and you have a way to locate that? That's one thing that I have not learned yet, and I'd love to know. And I know some guys specialize in that. But if you could just write back to me about what tool to buy or what brand. I've got a couple meter stores here in Colorado that are fantastic I get my stuff at. But just let me know your knowledge. I've heard so many different things you can do. I don't know if it's wands or if it's just going to be a meter. I've heard of TDRs if that may work, which is a time domain reference meter. I've heard of mega meters, but I can't really measure this because the neutral's smaller than the 2 hots. And so if the neutral's smaller than the 2 hots, that goes to show me right there that I'm not going to be able to measure that out next to each other. Now if one of the hots was dead and it was 2 hots and a 1 ot, yeah, I could probably use that 1 ot and 2 ot against the 1 ot and 2 ot. But when I've got 2 2-aughts and the 1 ot bad, there's no way to really measure that unless I buy some 1 ot. But it's got to be the exact length. And that's what the code talks about with parallel wiring. But in order to test it, you truly have to have the exact same length. So you can look in Chapter 8, Table 9, and know what is my resistance per foot. Anyways, guys, thanks for joining us. Have a good night.